When I was around the age of 20, I had just recently gotten my first ever paying job at my 24-hour local Taco Bell. The job was okay, it wasn't a well-paying job, and the other workers were somewhat rude, but it's better than not having a job. My first few months of working there went pretty well of me being the cashier. I'd collect the money and take customers' orders, and the job was actually pretty easy, and I was fine with it. One day, my manager told me that I had to work the night shift for a week, 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. I was pretty upset, but I couldn't argue with him, so I took the shift. The first few nights went okay. After around 11 p.m., people would stop coming in, and I had maybe 3 or 4 people come in at around 1 for a taco or something. One night, it was around 12:30 a.m., and it was just me and 2 other workers who made the food. I was sitting down in one of the chairs playing a game on my phone when I heard the door open. I looked to see a man, I'd say in his mid-40s, with a hat and jacket on. He had a long beard and his hair was all messy and greasy. I politely welcomed him and asked if I could take his order, but he didn't say anything. He just stood in front of me looking at me with a blank expression on his face. I assumed that he was on something or had some sort of disability, but just then he started to walk away and out the front door. I have to admit that I was a bit freaked out, but really thought nothing of it and continued to do my shift and whatnot. However, I then started to get the feeling that I was being watched somehow and was getting paranoid. Finally, 2 a.m. came around and the other employee, we'll call her Michelle, came in for her shift. Her and I were really good friends, so we chatted for a bit while I was finishing cleaning the counters. At some point in the conversation, she said that she'd be right back and that she had to use the restroom. A few minutes went by, which then turned into 10 minutes and eventually into 20. I then thought to myself, what could she possibly be doing in there that's taking her so long? At this point, I was starting to get worried and thought that something might have happened to her. I slowly walked over to the women's restroom and opened the door just a bit. However, I noticed that all of the lights in the women's restroom were off when they should have been on at all times. I turned them on and yelled out, "Michelle, are you okay?" There was no response from her. I wanted to let her have privacy, but I had the strong feeling that something wasn't right. I went inside calling Michelle again and again. Once I passed a stall, I heard what sounded like a light cry and whimpering. I opened the stall door and was shook with fear. I saw the same exact man from earlier holding Michelle while putting his hand around her mouth. That's not the most disturbing part though. The man was holding a large knife against Michelle's throat. Her eyes were filled with fear and was crying like crazy. She was scared for her life. The man then said in a raspy voice, "If you don't get all of that money from the register, I will slit her throat and blood will be all over this room." I was so scared that I couldn't even speak. I could tell that the more time I stood there, the more angry he got. I ran to the register and took all of the cash out in a bag and went to the bathroom and gave it to him. He then let go of her and pushed her to me. He ran out the front door, never to be seen again. All the while, Michelle was crying on me and thanking me for saving her life. We of course called the cops, but nothing ever came of the man. And the cameras we had in the store didn't help as the footage was too blurry to identify who the man was. Michelle and I quit a week later and both started working at a grocery store. However, sometimes I think that what would have happened to her had I not went into the bathroom to check on her. That still freaks me out till this day. When I was around 10 years old, the most horrifying thing happened to me. I was still in elementary school at the time, and I was definitely no popular kid. I had a few acquaintances here and there, but I would overall not really talk to anyone. One day, my mom said that she was going to pick me up from school early that day as we were going on a vacation to visit family that was about 6 hours away. That day, at around 1, I left school early and got into my mom's car. She had packed all the clothes, bathroom utilities, and stuff you would need for a long road trip. For the first few hours, I was listening to my iPad and eventually ended up taking a nap. Around, I'd say, the 4-hour mark, it was basically around 5 or 6 p.m., and it was getting dark fast, and we both were hungry and wouldn't be at our relative's house for a good 2 hours, so my mom and I decided to stop at a nearby Taco Bell. Not my favorite fast food restaurant, but I could live with it. We stepped inside and placed our orders, and once we got our food, we then sat down. So I'm sitting down talking to my mom about what we'd be doing once we got there, but she didn't seem too focused on what I was saying. She was looking over me in different directions as if she were worried or confused about something. I looked behind me but saw nothing and brushed it off as her being paranoid. So 10 minutes goes by and my mom says she has to step out to take an important phone call and that she'd be watching me through the window and that she'd be right back. So she's on the phone and I'm minding my business when I smell something extremely foul. I look to my left to see a man in his late 50s looking down at me. He said in a deep voice, "Hey young lady, my name is John, what's yours?" My mom was very strict about the whole stranger danger thing, and I was taught never to talk to strangers. This guy was very often sketchy. He had a long gray beard, cracked yellow teeth, and looked like he hadn't been to the gym in years. He said again, "Come on honey, tell me your name, I would love to get to know you." Just then, I saw my mom thankfully walking back into the restaurant and he must have caught my eye and walked away. I decided not to tell my mom about any detail of what just happened as she takes everything very seriously and told her we should go after she was done eating. A few minutes went by and my mom told me that if I had to use the restroom that I should go now as we had a long way ahead of us and probably wouldn't be stopping anywhere else. I got up and walked over to the restroom and opened the door. I was about to open one of the stalls when I heard a very familiar voice say, "Hey Rachel, wanna come over with me? I have some candy you'll like." I froze in fear and realized that it was the same man from earlier. I did not respond. I just simply walked out of the door and my mom and I then left. However, as I was in the car while my mom was pulling out of the parking spot, I looked out the window and there he was. He was still inside waving at me with that creepy smile. I didn't look back and I didn't tell my mom. I have absolutely no idea as to what his intentions were. Why was he in the women's restroom? What would he have done if he had gotten a hold of me? The part that still scares me till this day is how he knew my name. That still sends shivers up my spine just thinking about it till this day. I hope I don't see that creepy man again. My name is Daniel, and I was about 20 years old when this happened to me at a Taco Bell. I've always been the type of person who would eat fast food almost every day. Whether it would be for lunch or dinner or even a snack, I would almost go out for fast food at least once a day. I know, not that healthy, but that's just how I live. One night, I had just finished my shift from my full-time job and working over 8 hours at a car dealership. I was driving and planning to head home, but thought about doing my daily routine of getting some fast food. The dealership I worked at is kind of in a rural area, which I guess is in the outskirts of my city, which means that there aren't a lot of places around. My house is about a 20-mile drive depending if there's traffic or not. Anyway, I didn't see a McDonald's or Burger King or anything like that. However, I decided to take a different way, hoping I would find a place to eat that was open late. I ended up seeing a Taco Bell up ahead. Not my favorite fast food place, but at least it's food and I couldn't drive home without anything in my stomach. I pulled into the parking lot, got out of my car and walked in. I ordered my food, sat down at a table and enjoyed the tacos I was having. I was there for about a good 15 minutes before I was done and planning on leaving. I walked out of the door with my phone in hand, texting one of my coworkers when some guy ran up to me out of breath. He looked tired and thirsty and was very sweaty as if he just ran a marathon. He said to me while still hyperventilating, Hey man, do you think you'd just spare me a few dollars? I just need a soda or something." I told him that I wasn't sure as I don't really carry cash often, but that I would check in the car for a few dollars. I was in my car looking for some money in the back seat when I hear my passenger car door open and then close. I looked to see the man in the passenger seat holding a gun in his hands, pointing it directly at my face. You could imagine the panic I was in, and my blood turned cold, and it didn't help that he had a very angry look on his face. He said these exact words: "Now, you are going to listen to exactly as I say, or I won't hesitate to shoot you in the head, and blood in the brain matter will be all over the inside of your car." I remained calm and said, "Okay, so what do you want me to do here?" He said to pull up the GPS on my phone and to drive to a specific address. At this point, I'm pissing myself and hoping that one of the employees at Taco Bell would see this, but they didn't notice, and I didn't want to risk trying anything to get help. I put in the given address, and it was about 10 miles. I put my car into drive and we start making our way over there. The more I started to look at him, the more angry he got, and the closer the gun got to my head. I then came to a red light and decided to make a decision. I'm a pretty big guy, 6'5", and when I was 10, my grandfather would always take me hunting and even taught me how to take a gun away from someone before he unfortunately passed away. I decided to listen to my grandpa's advice, but it's been so long since he taught me how to take a gun away from someone, but I had to try it and I knew this was my chance. I tried to remember the steps and attempted to grab the gun from him. The gun eventually dropped to the floor, but thankfully I was faster than he was and I grabbed the gun before he did. I pointed at him and said, "Now you listen to me. If you don't get out of my car, I will shoot you." He then got out of my car and started walking along the sidewalk, never to be seen again. I finally made it home safe and I felt relieved. I then gave the gun to the authorities, but I don't know what happened to it after that. And I still have no idea where he was leading me to, and what would have happened had he gotten the gun first when it fell. I still have nightmares about it happening. So, I guess the lesson is to be careful out there, and not to go to Taco Bell or any other fast food restaurants so late at night. You never know what could happen.